These days, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries. And with that, we sent away good jobs and our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make all kinds of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs in towns and cities across the country. And jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
Ay, Joy, siempre estás en algo. Eres panadera y ambiciosa, nueva mamá y estudiante. Haces de todo. En National University apoyamos todo lo que haces. Por eso hemos diseñado un apoyo integral para estudiantes para estar contigo donde estés, ofreciendo programas flexibles, híbridos y en línea para que puedas enfocarte en lo más importante. National University. Apoyamos todo tu ser. Conoce más en nu.edu/español.
Something I didn't anticipate coming out of this is that period of growth for myself that I don't know that I think it would have taken me a lot longer to get there had it not been for something that on paper is a terrible thing to go through. But for me, it was just a chance to really understand that I needed to grow up too. I needed to change a few things about myself too.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast, brought to you by Ampcoil. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we discuss the common thread survivors share after walking through the fire, the practitioners making a difference, and the treatment modalities that deliver healing back into the hands of the people who need it most. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. I have an amazing episode, so timely with the holidays. I have some guests here in Rochester, New York. I have Adam and Debby Petzold, and we are going to talk a little bit about nesting. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Can we start off? Can you guys give me your definition of nesting?
So nesting was kind of coined by Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin. So that was kind of how they became popular and in pop culture. So nesting is basically, okay, so if people end up getting separated or divorced and they have children and they want to put the children first and they don't want to transfer the child and all the child's worldly belongings between two places. What we do is we have one home that our son stays at, and while he's here, whoever has him for that night is with him at the house, and whoever is not is at the other place. And in our case, that is a rental property. And we have a multifamily house, and we have one of the apartments in that house, a 2-bedroom apartment. So everyone's got their own bedroom, but nobody is there at the same time.
Okay, so there's a nest.
Yes, that's very complicated, right?
It's a complicated way to say there's a nest. There's a nest for the child, which is always maintained. He has a safe home base. And just for everybody at home, Adam, Debby, and I went to college together, and I sang at their wedding, which is a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. I sang The Luckiest from Ben Folds. Oh, they're pointing at the wall. Hold on.
Yeah.
Oh,
there.
There's some beautiful pictures on the wall of the wedding, the ceremony. And you guys are a wonderful couple and a wonderful team at the game of life. And I've always admired your guys' open communication and the love that you guys share. And there was a time when you came to your relationship and you decided you didn't want to be married anymore. And along with that came the planning for the child that you had. A beautiful, beautiful son named Gavin. And your choice was to maintain this nest. Why did you guys go with that decision?
I think from my perspective, I really looked at Adam to come up with the solution. For me, my parents have been married for over 40 years. And I never really intended, I don't think anybody intends to separate or get divorced when they get married. And I had no idea what to do. I knew that Adam and I had reached a point in our lives where even though we cared very much for each other, that our marriage wasn't going to continue to work. So when Adam and I said, we've got to figure this out, neither one of us wanted to have this situation that he grew up in, which was, you feel this struggle between your parents. You care very much about them, but maybe you're a little bit resentful of the fact that one person gets your family home, the other person moves into an apartment that probably doesn't feel like home, and you're shuttled back and forth between those two places. So how do we avoid that? And when Adam suggested nesting, the first thing that my sister, who she's my best friend, she's like, "Are you crazy? Why would you want to, why would you want to buy property with somebody that you're divorcing? What if something goes wrong? This just doesn't seem like a good idea." And so, for lack of a better idea, though, we really said, all right, if we want to make this a reality, let's sit down and figure out how could this actually work? What type of property would we need? Would it need to be close to work? How far are we willing to drive, knowing that we both work in the same town, knowing our son needs to still stay relatively close by and feel comfortable with the property that we picked out, too. That was a big thing, was making sure Gavin was a part of that, to say, when mom and dad aren't here, does he know where we are? And is he okay with, yep, when mom's at the apartment, I know what that place looks like. I've been there. Maybe I slept over. She's got a couple things there, and we're safe, that kind of thing.
So it really does take, it takes a special human being. It takes a special connection to be able to do this. Obviously, we, as we've all been on the planet roughly 40 years, the three of us, collectively 120, which is incredible. There's a lot of knowledge in the room. We've all seen relationships end different ways, and sometimes very hostile, a lot of animosity. And your choice was to really work through things with, a lot of. I felt like love was always in the room, even though I know how hard it was at the time. I remember some of those conversations with Adam, and I remember trying to support him the best that I could through that. But I remember you coming to me and saying, "We found a house that we're gonna buy together," and to me, I was like, what?
You're crazy.
Why are you buying property again? You already own property with someone that you no longer want to be married to.
Yeah.
But the plan was to have this nest and to create, to hold the home base, and then one of you had somewhere to pivot to. So how did that go when you first jumped into it? Tell me about like the initial 3 months.
It's really hard. It's really hard to set up a new routine and make that comfortable for everybody and still focus on Gavin and realize quickly that you have to communicate more with your partner than you ever did when you were married. And a lot of times that's when it breaks down, is when communication breaks down in a marriage. You don't get it back, and that's when people separate. And now all of a sudden I'm texting her more than I ever have before just to coordinate, with Gavin, and it's kind of hard. It feels bizarre. It feels like you have to find yourself. And I think both of us actually, we didn't jump into other relationships. We didn't, we dated ourselves. We did that thing and we kind of found who we were again. And we really took our time with that and still focused on Gavin. And when you don't have to focus on your marriage, as bad as that sounds, all of your attention goes to your child and becoming a better father and a better mother. And it seems kind of crazy and selfish to have that time to yourself. But then when you are with them, it's much better quality time because you're hyper-focused on making sure that he's okay. And I think also, too, that it depends on the age, and everybody's different. And I will say that you want to get everyone's advice, but it's really hard to tune people out. And I think we did a really good job of, making the decision that was right for our family, because only the three of us knew what that is. And it's really hard to tune out, everyone else's opinion. While we appreciate it, it's something that's tough to do, for sure, whether it's your mother, your sister, or your best friend, when you're asking for advice and then you say, hey, this is what we're doing. And everyone's like, you're nuts.
So how long has it been? How long have you guys been in this nesting phase?
I think it's 4 or 5 years now.
September of 15. So, and is when we closed on that house, when we moved into that apartment. So, yeah, what is it? So that's 5 years, over 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And what about, how much did you involve Gavin's school, his educational pillars?
We, at first, I think we were so worried about, how are we going to work through this as a family? We knew we had to talk to Gavin's teacher. And he was in, gosh, what grade was he in then?
Well, he was 5, so it was kindergarten.
Yeah. And, what was interesting was when we talked to his kindergartner teacher and said, this is kind of what's going on. We know that we're hoping that it's not an interruption for Gavin. We're hoping that he is, feeling like I get extra time with mom certain nights of the week. I get extra time with dad. It's one-on-one time, and it's not someone's missing. It's I get 100% of their attention. And
we had the calendar, and it was very much developmental. So at that age, it's very much who's making me dinner. That's what they care about. It's like, okay, who's going to be here? They're, at 5, 6 years old, that's kind of, it's like immediate. Okay, who's going to be there? And as long as they know that, then they're fine. They don't look past that. And then we got the therapist who he's been with, and has been great.
Yeah, we ended up, after we talked to Gavin's school, one of the things that my mom had suggested was, it's going to be hard for someone who is, for a child who's 5 or 6 years old to really be able to articulate how he's feeling, how is this impacting him. We're going to see it more behaviorally than we will any sort of, full-on conversation. Hey, Mom, I don't really understand what divorce means. I don't understand what being separated means. And so we sought out the services of a local therapist who really specializes in adolescents. And he's been amazing. He's been able to, throughout the years, we've seen Gavin start to be able to talk more about not just really act out how he's feeling, but be able to talk to us about it. And maybe not so much in the moment while it's happening. It's usually a reflective after the fact. And he's had a couple questions about, I think what's tricky for him is sometimes he still thinks we're married just because we do try to spend holidays together. We have gone on family vacations together. And for him, knowing that this is normal, this is what his family looks like, when he goes to his friends' houses, now, especially that he's older and he sees their parents are home together, it's easy to understand why he might be confused as to, okay, well, my parents still talk to each other. My parents are, they spend time together with me sometimes. How come they're not still married?
And he has friends, too, now that are, children of divorce, and it's pretty common these days, 50%. And he sees these kids, and he knows that his friend isn't going to be there because he's going to be at his dad's, at that day. And so he sees his friends being, shuttled back and forth, and that, disruptive, it disrupts his playtime at least, right? So, yeah, I think he sees that, and is more noticeable of it now. I think he's not inquisitive as maybe some girls. If we had a daughter or something, I think they'd have quite a bit more questions. But yeah, Gavin's been great, and the questions will always come, and there'll always be questions no matter what, and it'll just be different based on his age. But I remember real clearly when my parents sat me down and told me when I was 8. And I knew, it's like, I don't think Gavin had an idea. It's not like we were cats and dogs fighting. Right. So, and he was obviously younger than I was. But, yeah, I think that was the tough conversation to have.
I remember specifically, actually, it was 2015. It was September. I was in San Francisco at the time. And I think you had, Adam, been to the emergency room with a visit, that you had an accident burning some fall foliage and trees in the backyard. Let's not go into that part of the podcast. However,
that's a whole different podcast.
That's a whole different podcast. But third degree skin burns.
One thing with that, though, is so while we were looking for a house, you think house hunting is stressful. We had decided to separate in April, and we were looking for a house and still living in the same house. And that was the hardest part, I think, from April to September to have that and to kind of navigate that was really difficult. And yeah.
But I remember talking about, because one thing that I mentioned on the podcast before has been Airbnb. And, we talk a lot about wellness and financial wellness. And when I talk to people one-on-one, because that's always an area that plays into chronic illness or disease. How are you going to pay for your treatment? How are you going to pay for yourself to move forward? And everybody I talked to, I was like, listen, here's the deal. I have rented a bedroom from my 2-bedroom apartment to strangers since 2012 and up until, January of last year. And it has saved my ass. And I remember we were speaking, you guys were looking for a multifamily home to be able to, because you didn't have a lot of extra cash lying around, but the idea on the table was if you could find something that was a multifamily property, that maybe that other apartment could almost be a wash if you had 2 rentals in that. So can you speak a little bit about kind of what you were looking for and what you thought would work in your budget?
We were really specific. And so you go through the options, right? So we could sell this house and move into 2 not so great apartments or 2 not so great houses that we, could afford and not be happy and shuttle them, or we could give this a shot, but it had to be real specific. We had to find a 3-family house in order to support it, because you couldn't do a duplex because that wouldn't support the other mortgage, right? So if you only had one apartment, that wouldn't pay the full mortgage on a house. So we had to find a 3-unit, and we had to find one where that we had a 2-bedroom, so that we weren't sharing a bedroom in this apartment. So it was really specific, and it was really difficult to find. And we were lucky we had a great friend of ours who was a realtor, and she was fantastic. And everything happens for a reason.
Can you name the realtor and the agency that she works for?
Yes, Julie Goen is amazing. She works for Remax and Pete Zizi, and they were fantastic throughout the whole process and continue to be. And Julie's just fantastic. And so this deal fell through. And like I said, and there's no coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. We love this property. Someone else was going to buy it. The deal fell through. I'm in D.C. at the time at like a concert, and they're like, the deal fell through. I'm like, sign it. And, the guy's like lives in Japan or something, and we're like, get his number, get on there right now. Let's get it done. And right. So we looked at, how many houses do you think?
I think we probably went through about 12 to 15 places. And it was, like we said, it was really important that this property had to be within, I think 20 to 25 minutes was really our limit between our house that we have in Henrietta. It had to be close by, because
we didn't want it to be too close, though. We didn't want any drop-ins, right? So
well, sure. But when we found this property, it was perfect, because my brother happens to live down the street on the same part. He's on the same street, just a little bit further down. And so it was a neighborhood we were familiar with. And Julie was extremely knowledgeable about the area. And in general, we were hoping to find something that felt like it needed to be a single family home, but in the sense that, it was someone had taken care of it. And it had character. It had the 2 separate bedrooms, like Adam mentioned. And it just felt like this was something that, even though the reason why we needed this property was probably one of the worst reasons that you could think of, but for what we needed it to be, it was perfect.
And we should say, so if you've ever been part of like House Hunters or like a renovation show, like that's like pause for divorce right there, right? And there we are fixing up this place, and a tenant moves out, and we fix up the back, and it's like flip or flop or whatever they're doing, and they're divorced, and they're like button heads, but we were able to do it, and we made it so that not only did we not have to pay a second mortgage, it was paid plus some. So it was an extra like $200 a month that we put aside just for expenses for that property. So it was all, we shared the expense of the other things, but it was really a godsend because we've always been splitting things down the middle, and there's just absolutely no way we could pay for the type of lifestyle we'd become accustomed to, just single family suburbia, nice neighborhood. And it's location. And it was, you get working professionals in this area, and it's a hipster neighborhood. It's trendy, and it's nice. I mean, you like it, right?
Yeah, I love it. My brother lives over there in the south wedge of Rochester. Big shout out to Rochester on this podcast.
Yes.
So my question, I kind of want to ask a few more questions about nesting. What has nesting done for your relationship as a couple of divorce going forward?
I think that one of the reasons when I started to think about why did our marriage fall apart, I can look back and pinpoint a moment in which, Adam, I think, went through a tremendous period of growth. And unfortunately, I didn't really know how to handle that. I would love to think that, it was more out of fear of not really understanding what does Adam's growth mean for me? And am I now still a priority? Am I still worthy of this relationship because he's changed so many things about himself? When I started to think about the opportunity that our nesting arrangement represented, it's kind of a moment where you have to figure this out. I have to figure this out for my son. If this means that I'm being pushed to grow when maybe I didn't feel I was ready to, and our separation is the catalyst for that. And in turn, it is Adam's idea that has really started this ball rolling, so to speak. It's really allowed me to feel a sense of appreciation and being grateful for the fact that I have somebody in my life who is willing to put our son first, who still is, I can still say to Adam, I'm having a bad day. Can you grab Gavin? Can I have an extra night? Can I need you to do something for me, and he can do the same, with me. I think that's been something I didn't anticipate coming out of this, is that period of growth for myself that I don't know that I think it would have taken me a lot longer to get there had it not been for something that on paper is a terrible thing to go through. But for me, it was just a chance to really understand that I needed to grow up too. I needed to change a few things about myself too.
And Adam, how's it changed? How's it changed your course? Having this choice cemented, be put into the physical, and then what have the last 5 years done for you?
Yeah, it's kind of that growth. I mean, we were married for 10 years and together for 13, going back to college.
I was there from the start.
Yeah, from the start. That's right, buddy. So yeah, and it was Debbie was always part of the gang, and it was it was hard to realize that if you don't change together, because everybody changes, that that can be an issue, and that can lead to problems. And when that communication breaks down, it's it can lead to issues. And the other thing too is, I believe in the analogy of the airplane masks, where they say you have to put it over your face first before you put it over your child's, because look, you're no good to them dead. You have to take care of yourself first in order to be any kind of a father or parent or partner to anybody. And yes, it seems selfish. And I'm an only child, and I will readily admit that I'm very selfish at times. But what this has done is, again, it's helped me change, hopefully for the better. I went through a physical transformation, and that one made me want to change everything else and change from the inside. Sometimes you have to change from the outside first to really start working on the internal side. And I think the communication has really been the best. I've been able to communicate, and I think Debbie too, of what I want out of a relationship, what I want out of being a parent, what I want out of being a co-parent, and being able to vocalize that and really sit with yourself and sit and see what you need. And I think that's been the best part of that, and learning to do that has been, it took me much longer to change that than it did my physical appearance.
Mm-hmm. So let's just sidebar there, because the audience at home can't see Adam. Adam's, how old are you, Adam?
Almost 40, 39.
He's 39.
Yeah.
He's almost 40. There was a time in college when we were there, and we were very much similar body types, and we both have shaved heads, so we look like brothers, and we were both about the same size. And then there was a time after college where, Adam, what was your top? You gained a little bit of weight.
Yeah, so I was 185 going into college, 225 leaving college, and I got up to 260 pounds. And not good pounds.
Yeah. Adam was not a healthy guy. I remember coming home, because I was in the middle of, singing and dancing in New York, and super, super physical and active, and you'd kind of sank into a little bit of a depression.
Oh, big time. I was an alcoholic. I was, it was my 20s, but it was a whole decade of letting myself go. And, like I said, really drinking my feelings away and not being able to express myself and getting lost and, at the bottom of that hole. And I stopped drinking, and a month after Gavin was born, and that I lost 10 pounds right there. And then I started getting back to the gym and working out. Took about a year and a half, lost 80 pounds, and became a personal trainer because that really inspired me to help others. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. So I've maintained it for, a decade. So
yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it's 9 years and 8 months sober. Yeah.
So you've lost all that weight. Adam's in amazing shape. It's incredible. I feel like such a weakling, flabby.
I'm
Gumby.
the stocky Fred.
I do. It's very intimidating in the gym. But so Adam's doing really great, and he does tons of theater, and he's involved in the arts, and you're still not drinking, right?
No, 9 years, 8 months sober.
9 years sober.
Yeah,
and
feels good.
Debbie has an amazing job at Paychex, and you've continued to climb that ladder there, correct?
Yes, sir. Yep. I've been at Paychex at the end of December. It will be 17 years. I'm a program manager there. I love my job. I've made some incredible friendships. And I'm taking an exam in a couple months to have my certification for a project manager. So
Incredible. And it's an amazing company in Rochester. So you guys are doing really good. You're thriving. One thing I want to say about, I know families are out there, and I can see people like scrunching their nose and be like, oh my God, I couldn't imagine doing this with a person that I didn't want to be with. But, whether you decide to do something outside of the box like nesting, or you decide to work through with an unconventional therapist, holistic therapy, whatever you choose to do, and I think you guys know this, is that you've got to be aware how intelligent children are and how in tune they are to the energy in the room. And working with energy and frequency and being a Reiki healer and a coach and, working with subtle energies like amp coil, I'm so in tune. And one thing I witness is children, they pick up information so fast without hearing it, they actually feel it. So whether you're going to, again, you're going to make a choice like you guys do to do something very proactive and nest, or you're going to just, I know, my parents stayed together, even though probably
a little
too long.
Right.
And so that was my model for a relationship. And, you could say there's very noble things. They sacrificed, everything for the children. But then what do the children witness as a model for healthy communication? Everything, there's a consequence to every choice. And just being around Gavin and seeing you guys, I think it's a right choice. And the audience, just so the audience knows, you guys were flown down to New York City to be on the now infamous Megyn Kelly's show, right?
The Today Show with Megyn Kelly.
The Today Show with Megyn Kelly. Now, Megyn Kelly doesn't work for the Today Show anymore.
No. But she was very nice to us.
Yes.
She was a gracious host.
That was a great experience.
So, yeah, it's neat. And, it takes a village. It really does. And it might not be right for everybody, but I would really encourage people to think outside the box and do what's right for them and focus on that. And there's no wrong answer, Like I said, like you said, you put the kid first, and you have to put your feelings aside, no matter what that person has done to you in that relationship or what they've said. You've got to put the kid first and focus on that. And whether that's through therapy or mediation or anything else, all of which we've done and are big proponents of. Gavin's therapist, we were in therapy the other day, and he says, "You are the couplest uncouple I've ever seen," so it's a compliment, but it was pretty funny.
And to be honest, when we first moved into the rental property, I hated it at first.
I remember that.
It was the first,
I remember that.
It was the first time that I was forced to spend time by myself and for an extended period of time. And it was just this realization that this is what my life is now like. And I'm not going to see my son every day. And instead of, I think it took me a good, 3 or 4 months of realizing that, yes, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be. I never thought that I would be, 30-something years old. I'm not with my son's dad anymore. I'm living in a property that I don't own really. Like, it's not my style. It's not where I want to be. But eventually what came out of that was this appreciation for the fact that, 3 days out of the week, I get to just be me, and that sounds a little strange because, of course, at our cores, we're always ourselves. But when I'm with my son, I am his mom. That's the hat I wear. But when I'm not with him, that gives me an opportunity to start to uncover some of those things about, what was so scary about spending time with myself and really understanding what do I want to do with my time and how do I want to spend that, and realizing that I don't think I did a very good job advocating for myself in a relationship and understanding that, not to say that I didn't have a voice, of course I did. I don't know that I ever really used it as much as I could have or should have. And some of that goes back to, we talk about communication and making sure that your partner, your husband, your spouse, whoever knows, what page are you guys on? Are you guys even reading out of the same book, so to speak? But it absolutely was the right decision for us to nest and to have this arrangement. And it's worked so well. It's silly. Like, thanks, Gwyneth Paltrow, for introducing the world.
Thank you, Gwyneth Paltrow,
right?
Chris Martin for all the great music.
Never thought I would say that.
So I know. So
you don't have to be rich to do it.
You don't have to be rich to do it. You can be
it.
creative. You can be creative. I think the one takeaway for me is, if you want to find a way, there's always a way through. It might not be what you envision it to be, but just be open. There's other choices out there. There's people that are doing this. There's great examples. I'm sure there's great websites online at this point about nesting. There's books, there's resources, there's support groups for parents that are nesting. And that's something you can definitely reach out there and grab. Guys, I think this is a great little token for parents looking for a resource, and probably just to dip the toe in the water on the topic. I'm gonna close it up, but because this is a beautifully broken podcast, I'm gonna ask you both, what does it mean? And you went through this lovely, and I'm just gonna look, guys, I'm gonna take pause. I need to look back at this wedding picture one more time behind me.
It's still on the wall.
It's such a beautiful wedding photo. So you went through this, life choice to get married. It didn't unfold the way you thought it would. I'm sure no regrets, but what does it mean to you to be beautifully broken and go through this process of a breakdown and a build back up? Adam, you can go first.
Yeah, I think beautifully broken, I think everybody's broken and everybody breaks down, and it's how you pick yourself back up and how you remake yourself that counts. And that's what it is to me. It's not being stuck in a mold and doing what you have to do to break out, whether that's break down, whether that's hit the bottom, whether that's, be at the lowest, then do it. And I think that sometimes that's what it takes. And then you have to realize it, and then you have to really figure out what it is you want and how to do that. And I don't think you can do that with a lot of the society's constructions in place. That has to all be broken down, and again, it's how you rebuild yourself that makes it beautifully. And I'm constantly having to do that. And there's a fine line between being complacent and being content. And that's the hardest thing for me is, it seems like every 5 years I have to break myself down to build myself back up again in some form or fashion. And it's an evolution. And that's what it is. And if you ever want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans, right? So
that was a great answer, Debbie. Take it away.
I think for me, at the time when Adam and I were in mediation, one of the things that the mediator asked him was, why did you want to get married? And I was really upset by Adam's response because it was very much well, that's what you do. You meet somebody, you start dating them, a certain amount of time goes by, you pop the question, then a certain amount of time goes by, you have a kid. And my heart sank because it almost trivialized many of the things that people consider milestones. But looking back on it now, it starts to make more sense with the idea that there are a lot of expectations that we have become used to. Is this idea that, you should be with one person forever, or that you're always going to feel the same way about somebody as you do when you first meet them. And with everything that Adam and I have gone through, I think it's allowed me to understand that even though my first marriage and my first serious relationship didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to, the things that it has allowed me to understand about myself and what I want in a relationship, and the things that I kind of didn't do as well the first time around, it's allowed me to really understand that I look at what's going to happen next as an opportunity for me to show that I've learned those lessons and apply those lessons moving forward. Not to say that, of course, I don't thank Adam for our marriage ending. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. But I do know that I wouldn't have had as much growth had we had not gone through this over the last 5 years or so.
Beautiful. Well, you guys I'm such a fan of you both. I'm so proud of you. The nesting podcast has been on my mind for a long time. And as I was driving to my dad's house for Christmas today, our pre-Christmas celebration, I was like, Adam, do you think Debbie would be down for the nesting? He was like, let me check if she's home. So we got to do it live, which is so much better. And we will we'll check back in at some point. We're at the 5-year mark now, right? 6 year mark now. And if anybody wants to reach out and ask Adam or Debbie questions, I know Adam, you're on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, and feel free to give you my email. It's just my name, Adam Petzold at Gmail, and I'm always available to answer questions and happy to help. It's if we can inspire, and that's one of the reasons we did the Today Show. Debbie didn't really want to do it; she was a little nervous, but that was her thing. She's like, if we can help one other couple, it's worth it.
And there's a link to the Today Show episode, correct?
Yeah, it's just my name and Today's Show. I think it'll pop up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll put that in the show notes as well. I think that's a great resource for people. And again, tools. There's tools out there. There's information. we're drowning. I always say this, we're drowning in information. We're starving for knowledge. I think the application of the information that you guys have put into action to create this beautiful nest is the heart explosion that Beautifully Broken is all about. So thank you so much for being here, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Freddie.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Ladies and gentlemen, you made it to the end of the podcast. Now, in a world where the average attention span is less than 10 seconds, we just spent almost an hour together. And I think this is the beginning of something really beautiful. Now, one way to support the podcast is to head over to FreddieSetGo.com and check out my newly launched page, Freddie's Faves, where I've linked every 5-star product and healing modality you hear about on the show. Most offer significant discounts by clicking the link. And please know, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and at the same time, they support the show through affiliation. So, check out Freddie's Faves on FreddieSetGo.com. This episode of the Beautifully Broken podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, Amp Coil, upgrading the vibrations of hearts, minds, and bodies all over the world. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. Grabbing a download is like giving this virtual thumbs up that we're doing it right. And if you want to connect with me, shoot me a message on Instagram at FreddieSetGo.com or at FreddieSetGo. That's all for today. Our closing. The world is hurting. We need you at your very best. So take the steps today to always be upgrading, whatever it takes to move the needle. Remember, while life is pain, putting those fractured pieces back together is a beautiful process. I'm your host. I love you. Namaste. Have a wonderful day.
This country was built on a distinctly American work ethic, but today, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries, and with that, we sent away good jobs and diminished our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make a variety of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more. All made right here in the USA, from growing the cotton and adding the final touches. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs for seamsters, cutters, and factory workers in towns and cities across the United States. And it's about more than an income. Jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.